Hi, guys, and welcome to this panel called Innovation, the Ultimate Asset. I wanted to start with an open question to all three of you. If innovation is the ultimate asset, what kind of innovation is going to help the Middle East reach its full potential? Is it mindset, policy, or market structure, or something completely different? Maybe, Your Royal Highness, you'd like to start.
Sure. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, sallallahu ala rasulullah. Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure being back in ADFW. I honestly think that the Middle East needs to focus on the business of the Middle East need to focus on a lot less of replicas from Silicon Valley companies and more on the constraints that we have here in the environment, in our environment at least, food security, harnessing energy as it should be, AI, obviously, and infrastructure. We have a large, probably unbanked population that I think need to be served. I think these fintech plays really need to play a bigger role here, rather than having the next food delivery company or anything. With all respect to the other ones, but at the end of the day, we need to focus on the issues that we have at hand, and I think it's happening pretty fast. But I don't think it's happening to the rate and the scale that we needed to happen. That's my point of view.
I see. And maybe, Jenny, you can come in here. What do you think is holding the Middle East back to its full potential?
Well, so I think it's all those things, right? And I think that innovation takes creativity and it takes capital. As I said to my colleagues in Europe, I bet there's a lot of really smart entrepreneurs in Germany, France, the UK, and other places. But why do they go to the US to go build their companies? Because it's about policy, it's about the environment, and I think in the Gulf region, you've got so many of those things. I think the one opportunity is, on the one hand, there's a great tailwind with the visions and the plans that are laid out. The other hand, we need to get deeper capital markets to attract that capital in. And there's some structural things that I think we're moving towards that need to happen that will help improve it.
So I think from our standpoint, what innovation needs to be done is around two big themes. One is what we call global resilience, where each region needs to build strategic autonomy in the key industries. And the second is using AI so you can actually build these companies to be on the right side of history. And our view is, and this applies to every part of the world today, how do you build companies that first and foremost drive resiliency in your core markets? Financial services, healthcare, energy, defense, industrials. And I think for the region, what you have to think about is build companies locally that can actually be leaders in driving that strategic autonomy for the region, and then do it in a way that you can over time also be globally competitive. And that's really how you can create a hub around financial services or a hub around energy in the region.
And we're talking about innovation, and I think we can't not talk about AI. There's been much said about AI. Your Royal Highness, you've spoken quite enthusiastically about AI-driven leaps in diagnostics and healthcare. I'm curious to get your point of view on, are we in an AI bubble at the moment? And what's different from the dot-com bubble or the sort of 2021 VC run-up?
Sure. That's a large onion to peel. So if you excuse me if I take a longer time, but I'm sure you're going to hit a lot of these notes also. I think there's a huge difference between what happened in the AI bubble and what happened now. I think the AI bubble had a few different elements going on for it, going against it. You had higher valuations with very little relative to 12 months trailing earnings trailing. So you had a huge discrepancy over there. You don't have this right now, with at least with the companies that matter. So we're looking at NVIDIA, we're looking at Microsoft, we're looking at Meta, we're looking at Google. We're looking at companies that have substantial cash flow that can literally back their projected growth. Now, whether that applies to OpenAI or not is a different subject. I think $1 trillion valuation inevitably is overvalued when it comes to a company that can generate $13 billion now, $20 billion soon, and maybe $50 billion later in the middle of next year. But I think the scale of how AI is moving also contradicts that AI bubble narrative. Why? You had the realization of revenue right now relative to capex happens not instantaneously, but happens really, really quickly. You did not have that in the dot-com bubble. You had a huge lag from the from the dot-com bubble in 2000 all the way to 2007, 2006 is when you really realized the potential of the internet and how it really impacted our lives. With AI, you have exponential changes between one model to the other, from one quarter to the other, let alone 1 week to the other. And the realization of that is quite instantaneous. So you have all these factors playing in. I don't think it's an AI bubble per se, but I think a few companies that aren't necessarily in the that cannot back their valuations with proper revenue growth are definitely going to be the ones that actually feel it the most.
So I agree with His Excellency or His Highness. The one thing I would say is, maybe just to say it a different way, like when people even ask the question, I always think to myself, it's kind of like, who cares, right? So there's 7 stocks. We're talking about one of the greatest technological changes in our lifetime. And it's a bit like saying, if the picks and shovels got really expensive, then there's no point in the gold mine or the gold rush. Like, we haven't even begun to see the impact of AI across most sectors. I mean, companies are trying to figure out how to use it. Its pace of innovation is astonishing. And I don't think that's built into people's stock prices yet. And frankly, it'll probably take a couple of years before it really becomes transformative and meaningful in earnings for companies.
I see. So you're still quite enthusiastic. Hemant, I'd be curious to get your view. I think in the past you've said that bubbles are a good thing. Do you still hold that view? And what is your view on the stock market at the moment?
Look, I'm in venture capital. We live for bubbles because this is when you organize talent and capital behind important teams, and you get important companies to get created on the other side. Now, bubbles are very stressful because what happens is the sheer size of the opportunity is so large that lots of capital floods in, and decisions have to get made fast because there's fear of missing out, and everybody's deploying capital fast. So there's a lot of mistakes. But that does not mean that you don't create a lot of economic value on the other side of it. If you look at the AI bubble, what's happening today, you have 3 pretty profound AI companies that have moved the needle forward. You've got OpenAI, which started it all. You have Anthropic, who are large investors in Anthropic, and Google, which has gone and really vertically integrated and seems to be doing extraordinarily well at the moment. So what's happened is, next to it, because those are such fast accretion of value scenarios, there's a lot of fear of missing out. So a lot of researchers are getting funded with big dollars, very uncomfortable amount of money, in the hopes of creating next breakthroughs in AI. I think that part of it is very, very hard to see what's going to happen to that deployment of capital, because these are not really commercial teams. A lot of them are research teams, and you're waiting for scientific breakthroughs, which may or may not happen. And the dollars are really, really high. So all the attention and nervousness is because of that. But on top of it, the applied AI layer, we were thinking a lot about how do you diffuse technology into society. I would actually say this is the year where diffusion actually started. We're building a lot of companies that are on the ground, bringing AI into enterprises and starting to see that work faster and faster and actually show economic ROI. Early days, and that part of it I don't see stopping, because there's economic arguments for why businesses are going to transform. And that part of it is, to me, feels like just the beginning of what I think will be a pretty interesting cycle for us.
And if you don't mind me just adding two more cents to this. So we haven't even scratched the surface of what AI can do. Robotics hasn't even come into play. Self-driving cars haven't even started. Wearables haven't even started. All those, you need all the compute in the world. We have so much demand we have so much demand that the supply isn't good enough. But more importantly, that the energy to supply all the demand isn't there yet. So there are bottlenecks, obviously, and I think we're going to live through this in the next 24 months at least to actually realize the full potential of AI. But more importantly, what happens when that inflection point happens? What happens when AI becomes a little more than a really, really intelligent goldfish and turns into actual AGI and ASI? What happens to this displacement of millions of workers in Philippines, in India, or in the call centers, for example? They don't need that anymore. You can literally take out millions and millions of people just to save for the bottom line. So it'll be very cost effective, but more importantly, you have to have governments come into play. And unfortunately, you have to. Companies are not going to self-regulate. They're not going to self-govern themselves. So you have to have some sort of regulation that at least protects people from this enormous displacement that's going to happen. Now, I say this knowingly that when the car was introduced, people were displaced. Horse carriages and builders were displaced, and they found something else to do. But you're going to have a period of time where people are going to get displaced, and they're going to need to find new things to do. AI can help them do that, but that intermittent time is going to be super painful.
Yeah.
And you have to have a solution for that.
Interesting.
That's much more important than an AI bubble for me. We can survive an AI bubble.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting technology, and we're here in Abu Dhabi that is a big investor into AI. Jenny, I'm curious, how can investors protect themselves if there is a big market correction in terms of portfolio construction or other methods? Is there any way to protect against it, or can we just expect the worst?
I always say, it's amazing. It always comes back to the same basic tenets: diversification of a portfolio, understand your risk. And I was talking to some people about private credit, and I said, you can be worried about private credit, but everybody lumps private credit into one category and into an alts portfolio because it has one characteristic that's like the rest of alts. It's actually much more like your fixed income portfolio. And you would never look at your fixed income as one big, broad investment category. You're going to sit there and say, is investment grade looking attractive now? Is high yield? Is asset backed? Is real estate? And you need to be able to, look at the underlying risks of the portfolio. So I'd say, one is don't try to time the market. Diversification, all those sort of basic things are the best way to protect yourself. And I tend to think that 2026, the U.S. economy is, any indication. I think it's going to be pretty strong through 2026. I think there's an administration highly motivated to keep it strong at least through the midterms next November. So, you stay in the market, but stay diversified because we never know when that black swan comes in.
And are there attractive sectors to invest in outside of AI if we did want to diversify into perhaps real estate, infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, right now, real estate debt is a great category in the U.S. Why? Because the regional banks that were all lending there actually are not lending any longer. And so it's created this dislocation in the market. But your job as an investor, it's also why I believe it's not a part-time job, is to find those dislocations in the market. There's always something there.
Yeah. And Hemant, I want to bring in the VC angle here. How do you sort of, when you're looking at opportunities to invest in, how do you try and find opportunities that are truly institutional and will be here for the next 10 to 20 years and not just a here today, gone tomorrow investment?
Well, if I was being very honest, you actually don't know in the beginning a priori what's going to be a 10 to 20 year journey versus not. So I think what you're really looking for is founders that have a core insight that they believe in, and you sort of think about, is the timing right to take on that project? And then you have a lot of ambiguity to navigate, right? I mean, so much needs to happen in the markets, technologies. In the world of AI, it's very magnified because this has happened a few times now where AI models have come, they've built a new capability, founders start building on top of that. And then what happens is the new models get released that have new capabilities, and new founders come and build on the same things. There was almost a second mover advantage today because the technology is so ambiguous and changing so fast. And so just thinking through when's the right time to engage, and are the founders building with long-term considerations, but knowing full well that a lot of these don't make it. I mean, if you think about how many technology companies have become independent, large cap, businesses over the last 15 years, not that many, right? You would sort of say, Meta's gone there over the last 20 years. You've got, Stripe. You've got maybe some emerging ones like Anthropic and OpenAI, not that many. And so you're looking for those founders that do want to make those long-term bets and build with those considerations while being highly, highly urgent in winning the short term as well.
I see. And I want to switch to talk about blockchain and tokenization. Jenny, you've spoken a lot about this in the past. To me, it seems like it's relatively nascent and uptake is quite uneven globally. What's standing in the way of it really taking off and being used all around the world?
I'd say there's probably four big things that I think are slowing it down a bit. One is there is this concept of permissionless where people worry about, is this just a mechanism to do money laundering, right? So it's the KYC AML component of that you have to ensure that the tokens are going into qualified wallets. Second thing is, look, it's been a really tough regulatory environment. I mean, credit to the UAE and the ADGM who create a lot of clarity, which is why you see blockchain firms setting up here. But you really need a more global, coordinated regulatory environment. So that there needs to be some work there. And obviously, the U.S. has got much more constructive on it, but it was difficult. I'd say the third thing is this is a challenge to a lot of business models. There's a lot of business models that gets disrupted by this. And I think that they're going to be naturally motivated to slow it down because it will, and I know it because I've talked to some who said, don't let atomic settlement. We don't have the infrastructure. That's going to be a challenge. And so they'll try to slow it down. And then the final thing is there's actually not legal clarity around smart contracts as much as there should. So it's great. You can program into the token the smart contract, but you also have to know that you have all the legal rights to that. And that hasn't yet been tested. And so how far are you willing to go if you're not 100% sure about the legal rights there? But I would say water runs down a hill. This thing is coming. The efficiency of this software, there's plenty of blowups that will happen to crypto companies. That's a different thing. But this technology is absolutely coming to replace the rails in financial services.
And Hemant, do you share that enthusiasm around blockchain?
So we were early investors in Stripe, which is doing a lot on the blockchain side with Tempo. Now we incubated Circle with their ARC protocol, and then we've also done prediction markets like Polymarket and Kalshi. And if you think about the reason blockchain technologies were created, it was for trust. And a lot of the early work was how do you sort of determine trust in the financial markets? You think about Circle, stablecoin, a lot of what's going on. I think the next 15 years for blockchain are super interesting because if you believe the adoption of AI is going to happen rapidly, then what's the missing ingredient when you think about the implementation of AI? It's all about trust. Are the agents doing the right things? Are there nefarious activities, deep fakes? How do you really know what's real, what's not? So you're going to need to be able to implement trust digitally if your AI is going to actually be deployed at scale. And the very purpose of blockchain is to go enable that. So I think there's going to be a lot of new applications that get emerged to solve a lot of these problems.
And I wanted to sort of switch track a little bit in the final few minutes of this discussion. And Your Royal Highness, through Arada, you're buying into London property at a time of potentially weak sentiment and high interest rates. What are you seeing in the data that kind of makes you so bullish on the UK property market?
See, London's fundamentals haven't changed. They just gotten cheaper. And this is what we see right now. There's over-regulation. Sure, there's the high interest rates. There's a few issues here and there. But at the end of the day, when everybody is leaving, this is the opportunity for people like us, at least, to actually see there's a real opportunity there. And we saw a beautiful opportunity. I mean, there's a reason why London has still the infrastructure needs that it needs. There's huge housing crisis that it needs. And nobody can argue that London, there's a constraint in housing and there's no supply. These are fundamentals that we look at and we see them as being attractive. More importantly, if you look at the company and how Arada is structured, we have centralized procurement. We have so many tens of billions of product that tens of billions of value that we're going to be releasing to the public very soon when it comes to Sharjah, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia very soon, Sydney, the UK. All of that we can centralize procurement so we can cut costs significantly. More importantly, we have global cross-selling. People in Sydney want to live in London. People in London want to live in Sydney, and people in the UK want to live in both. People in the GCC want to live in both places. or have a place there. So at least we have centralized procurement, we have a global reach, and we have a global network of investors that we can easily tap into and really go into these markets in a strong way. And we believe in London. You know, that when you see a downturn happen in London, when you see what's happening in London right now, which is a downturn at the easiest definition of the words, I see an opportunity there, and we definitely saw it. That's why we have our partners that we bought, Regal, and right now that's why we're announcing maybe every month a new project over there. We're really excited about the growth in London that's going to happen in the next 5-7 years, and we're here for the long term. We're not here for a quick turnaround and leave. We're in London for at least the next 10-15 years.
Interesting. And are there any other property markets that you find appealing? Obviously, we've spoken about London. Are there any other countries, geographies that you think are exciting?
Yes, I mean, look, Saudi Arabia is a sleeping giant right now, and we see a huge need because there's maybe 2 million houses that need to be built there, and 100% the local developers are now going to be able to fulfill it. And if they do fulfill it, I think Saudis are fed up from the cookie cutter approach that the local developer has. And God bless them. But at the end of the day, we believe that we have a different product to give. We're in talks with about 5 or 6 entities. I'm not going to be too specific on that, but 5 or 6 quite large entities, and we think we're going to be inking a deal hopefully in Q1 2026. And then obviously, Saudi's there for the taking. You know, it's a huge market. The U.S. really does look good to us. The housing market over there, there's a huge need for housing. So we're looking at Miami, we're looking at Austin, we're looking at Nashville. We're not looking at necessarily the California, not necessarily looking at New York, but definitely the southern areas.
Exciting.
Yeah.
That is all we have time for. And thank you for attending this panel on innovation, the ultimate asset. Thank you.